Is a wonderful day to go see a movie. Star Wars right now, proving the Force is still on its side. The Last Jedi has raked in about $69 million over the weekend, bringing its worldwide total to $745 million. That makes Star Wars leading the top 5 list of the holiday weekend, followed by Jumanji, Welcome to the Jungle, Pitch Perfect 3, The Greatest Snowman, and Ferdinand has rounded up the top 5. I think it says a lot about my life that I don't recognize any of those titles, nor have I seen any of them.
You were dedicated to your work here at Fox News, Leland.
Exactly, and to my golf game last weekend.
More importantly, your golf game, which I know was fun for you. Well, the president and, of course, Congress have a long to-do list waiting when they get back to work after New Year's, including government funding, immigration reform, and disaster relief. Infrastructure also a big item on the agenda. Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell suggesting that Republicans and Democrats can work together.
They're just kind of a potpourri of year-end things that were, in the end, not addressed yesterday that we'll have to turn to in January, and we'll work most of those out on a bipartisan basis and pass what we need to pass.
Well, let's bring in Chris Bedford, editor-in-chief of the Daily Caller News Foundation, and Doug Schoen, Fox News contributor and former advisor to President Bill Clinton. Gentlemen, welcome and Merry Christmas to both of you.
Merry Christmas.
Same to you.
Doug, I want to start with you.
Sure.
Let's talk about infrastructure. You would think that is the one thing that could be bipartisan. Do you foresee that happening?
Well, I would like to think it would, and certainly we all have a common interest in fixing our roads, bridges, and highways. The but is, how do we pay for it? The president has been on record basically supporting a private-public partnership with the emphasis on private funding. The Democrats have traditionally supported higher taxes on the wealthy to fund the whole program. Obviously, that's a non-starter. I would say on Christmas Day, given that we all use, need, and rely on our roads, bridges, and highways, we ought to get together, and I think the president proposes a good starting point, and I, as a Democrat, believe that it's essential on something like infrastructure, which also has to do with our well-being and national security, that we commit to it at this time of the year.
Well, but Chris, will the president have struggles in the new year, considering that they've now had losses in Virginia, in Alabama, New Jersey? So, we're talking about the midterms in 2018. I mean, look, campaigning starts next month. Let's be frank here for these seats. And the president, I would think, would have to be very careful about the rhetoric that he uses with the Democrats. He needs them for infrastructure, but can he kind of get them on board and still maintain the strength of the party as we go to 2018?
Republicans are going to get some bruises in this coming midterm election. That's just what happens when you're the party that's in control of the White House. The first midterm, you catch a bruising. And that is even worse if it's a divisive president, like President Trump is, who can activate some of the base. Here's some of the things that Republicans have going for them, though. The Senate seats that they have are largely safe. They've got such a strong majority in the House that while they're going to lose a lot of their colleagues, they'll most likely keep on to it, hold on to it. And Democrats are pointing excitedly at elections like Alabama. They should keep in mind that in Alabama, their guy won 1 of the 7 congressional districts running against an accused child molester. This is not something to really write home about or get too excited about. Democrats ought to focus on economic issues, not some of the hard left issues that their base is pushing them toward, and they could hurt the GOP, but I wouldn't be so worried as they are right now.
Well, that's the thing, though, Doug. If you look at the strengthening economy, you've got GDP above 3%. If you look at the stock market, which is projected to do even better in 2018, Doug, that's something that Democrats are going to have to fight and contend with. They can take jabs at the president all they want, but if Americans feel better about their paychecks, that's going to be a struggle for Dems.
Well, if that's the case, yes, Cheryl, but right now the Democrats have a double-digit lead in the midterms, which traditionally, if it holds up, translates into pretty substantial double-digit gains in seats. There are a couple of Republican seats in Arizona and Nevada that are vulnerable, and so far the economic benefits that you talk about, which are real, haven't translated into real-world impact on people's lives in a way that impacts voting behavior. So Democrats are in pretty good shape as we go into 2018.
Doug, final word on this? Excuse me, Chris?
Yeah, he's right. There's some here things that actually really have helped. The Republicans got an early Christmas gift when companies like Comcast and AT&T decided to hand down with $1,000 Christmas bonuses to its hundreds of thousands of employees. It immediately creates a constituent who supports them. But it's going to take a little while, and the president has an uphill battle. The GOP, they're going to have to fight for this one.
A lot of companies giving out huge bonuses this month. You're right. Gentlemen, thank you very much. Merry Christmas.
Thank you so much.
Merry Christmas.
Well, perhaps the presents under your tree are still waiting for the kids to get up and rip into, or maybe you're sitting down to breakfast. But the Salvation Army is still doing a lot of work to help folks. They need your donations. Coming up, we're going to tell you what a few dollars can do.
My arthritis pain used to make my favorite things to do painful, but now with odor-free Blue Emu.
The volunteers, we ask a minimum of 2 hours, and everyone's been generous coming in with 2-4 hours to ring bells, to be out here in the cold. It's a beautiful night tonight, so it makes it a lot of fun.
And while we are celebrating with our families this Christmas Day, more than 3 million people this holiday season look to the Salvation Army for help with a hot meal, a warm place to sleep, or a Christmas present. Meantime, to help with that, an anonymous donor in Minneapolis dropped a check made out for $200,000 into one of those red kettles. Let's bring in Lieutenant Colonel Ron Busrow, National Community Relations Development and Secretary for the Salvation Army. As I said, Merry Christmas. Thanks for all the work you do, and thanks for being here with us rather than with your family this morning.
Well, it's great to be with you, and Merry Christmas to you and all those who are listening today.
At Salvation Army shelters around the country today, what's happening? Give us a blow-by-blow.
Well, today is a very special day because today, of course, is Christmas, and it's an opportunity for the Salvation Army to feed many more than the 28,000 who slept at a Salvation Army bed last night, but we'll feed hundreds of thousands of people today a nice Christmas meal, and there will be thousands of volunteers who come in and give part of their day to make sure that today is a Merry Christmas for anybody who wants a good hot meal. Well,
and that hot meal doesn't come free. We have a little bit of information about exactly what a donation means. When you put it in the red kennel, $2.70 provides a meal for someone in need. $25 helps give a child Christmas. $30 will provide a night of shelter, as you talked about. We've done so much the past couple of months about the stock market going up, about consumer confidence going up, people spending more on Christmas presents. Are people donating more, or is the need still as significant as it used to be?
Well, the need is still very significant. There are many people out there who live from paycheck to paycheck, and with the pressure of providing something for your children, quite often they overextend. And the Salvation Army, they can help them at Christmas, but also after the first of the year, they can help them with utilities and they can help them with rent, things like that. But this is an opportunity for people to give, and the spirit of Christmas, the spirit of the season, is about giving, and it's the people around this country, this great country, who give, who make it possible for the Salvation Army to help so many people.
Well, and it's not just at Christmas. What strikes me is what you just said about the Salvation Army. It's utility bills through the winter, but also it's at the hurricanes, at Irma and Harvey and Maria. You guys were there as well.
25 million people received help this year from the Salvation Army, and that's a significant number around the country. And yes, we're still working in places like Puerto Rico and Florida and Texas. I've gotten reports where the Salvation Army has gone above and beyond to provide even more Christmas assistance in places that were devastated by this summer storms, but also out in California with the wildfires. We don't want to forget those who've lost homes because of the wildfires.
It's so easy, especially for us in the media. You leave a story after the floodwaters recede, and in a couple of weeks later, it's all but forgotten. On the other hand, the folks who are without a home or have lost absolutely everything,
that's right,
they're the ones looking to you.
Well, and the Salvation Army never leaves, because we operate in every zip code in America. So when Hurricane Maria hit Puerto Rico, we had 14 locations where we were already serving people before the storm, and as soon as the storm passed, we were able to provide meals and shelter for people there, and have continued to provide assistance to those who've been devastated by these storms, and particularly in Puerto Rico.
Yeah, well, and still the recovery effort there in many ways is just beginning. Lieutenant Colonel, appreciate you being with us. Thank you very much.
Thank
Hopefully some folks use their year-end tax deduction donations to help you all out. Great work around the country.
It's very important this year to go online, SalvationArmyUSA.org, and make those year-end deductions, because this year you'll be able to deduct them. Next year you may have some problems. So make sure you make those donations before the end of the year.
Thank you, sir. All the best. Merry Christmas.
Thank you. Merry Christmas.
Well, more coming up. Recreational marijuana about to become legal in California. Ahead, how pot businesses are getting ready. World celebrating Christmas today, including President Trump in the winter wonderland that is South Florida. He and the First Lady attending church services last night in Palm Beach. It's actually the same church where they got married back in 2005. Well, hello and Merry Christmas to you. I'm Cheryl Casoni. We'd like to welcome you to America's News headquarters.
Great to be with you. Great to be with you at home as you wake up here on Christmas morning. Hope you're having a great Christmas. Before the first couple went to church yesterday, they took some Christmas calls from kids who were phoning the Santa trackers at NORAD to see where the man in red was, and instead, surprise, as you can tell, they got the President of the United States to help them track Santa. Rich Edson live in West Palm Beach, Florida, where the President is not too far away enjoying Christmas morning with his family. Good morning, Rich.
Hey, good morning, Leland. At a mostly quiet Christmas day for President Trump and the First Family here in Florida, but a beautiful December day here in the southern part of the state. The President did tweet this morning a Christmas message from him and the First Lady.
Melania, myself, Barron, and the entire Trump family, God bless you, God bless America, and have a very, very Merry Christmas and Happy New Year.
Some official business for the President of the United States this morning, as the White House Press Secretary Sarah Huckabee Sanders says aides have briefed the President on a suicide attack in Afghanistan's capital. Several international reports say the Islamic State has claimed responsibility for that suicide attack in Kabul on Afghanistan's intelligence agency, killing several people. A few months ago, the President did sign off on a strategy to increase the U.S. military presence there in a U.S.-involved war that has been ongoing for more than 16 years. Now, while the administration also is looking to cut the U.S. foreign policy budget, he has received pushback from Democrats, members of the foreign policy establishment, even some Republicans and those in military leadership, but some success on that front internationally. As the United States ambassador to the United Nations, Nikki Haley, has announced that the United States has successfully negotiated a cut in the UN budget of $285 million. In a statement, Ambassador Haley says, quote, "This historic reduction in spending, in addition to many other moves toward a more efficient and accountable UN, is a big step in the right direction. While we are pleased with the results of this year's budget negotiations, you can be sure we'll continue to look at ways to increase the UN's efficiency while protecting our interests." She also says the U.S. has reduced the UN's bloated management and support functions. So a quiet day thus far here near Mar-a-Lago, where the President is spending the Christmas holiday with the First Family. Leland and Cheryl, back to you.
Well, and Rich Edson spending his Christmas holiday with Serafin Gomez, one of our fearless White House producers. Thanks to you both for being down there.
Thanks.
Not a bad place to spend your Christmas. Well, for more on those UN budget cuts, let's bring in Katie Pavlich, editor at townhall.com and a Fox News contributor. Katie, Merry Christmas.
Good morning. Merry Christmas.
Thanks for being here this morning.
Yeah, of course. Good to see you.
I want to pick up on what Rich was talking about, this $285 million cut that Haley is proposing for the United Nations and then operating budget. I mean, we fund 22% of the UN. Right. She made it very clear enough is enough. Do you think that this is the right decision by Haley and by the administration.
Absolutely, and the number that we have here, the $200+ million, is pretty minor compared to the billions of dollars that we funnel into the UN every year. And if you look at the words that Nikki Haley is using, she's talking about efficiency at the UN. And the truth is that money going to an international body with countries that don't have the best interests of their people in mind isn't always the most efficient way to use that money. We've seen it abused in a number of places, and so it's long overdue that there's a full audit of the funding that goes to the UN. And I think it's a good thing that the Trump administration, through Nikki Haley, is taking a serious look at where we can cut some of this budget. On the criticism from Democrats that we shouldn't be doing this, and from foreign policy establishment types, this is not something just being proposed by the United States. If you remember at the beginning of the year, the UN Secretary General did sit down with President Trump and agreed that reform is necessary. He has also proposed a number of budget cuts. And so it really just comes down to how this money is being spent. Is it being spent efficiently? And is it going to countries and projects that don't have the best interests of human rights in mind?
And exactly, you know, the other question here, too, is what President Trump is going to kind of do in the new year. He's on his holiday right now, but it's going to be about national security when he comes back. Right. And he's already laid out that plan a little bit. And one of the things the president said, which I thought was very telling, as kind of a foreshadowing of what he's going to do, a nation that does not protect prosperity at home cannot protect its interests abroad. So it seems to me that the president is saying, look, enough with the United Nations and funding 20% of your budget. Let's focus on security here at home. And he has rolled out that national security platform.
Right. And we saw him be successful with NATO and going over and saying, look, we're doing the majority of the funding here. It's time for these countries who are in this body together to pay more of their fair share for the national security of their own countries, but also for the best interests of the United States. He laid out his national security strategy last week, which is required by Congress. One of the main pillars, there are 4 of them, is economic security here at home. That is an argument we've been hearing for a long time. You can't protect yourself from foreign threats or on foreign soil, whether it's cyber or on the battlefield, if you don't have a solid economic base here at home. And based on the past year in the economy, I think that they're well on their way to making sure that promise is kept. But in the foreign policy field, funding is going to be a big issue. Right. And it's not something that hasn't been done before. Barack Obama cut funding to Egypt over human rights abuses. So this is not necessarily something just that the Trump administration is doing. It's something that has been done by previous presidents to, kind of push some accountability and make sure that taxpayer money from Americans is used efficiently.
We were giving $100 million to Pakistan, and they were hiding Osama bin Laden. I mean, right. Case in point, he campaigned on that. Real quick, let me ask you about his rhetoric when it comes to China and to Russia, because he talked about the fact that there's going to be somewhat of a rejiggering of these relationships. What do you think that he meant by that? Do you think he's talking about maybe being a little bit tougher on Russia and China, especially when it comes to North Korea? Or do you think that he's, as he did already, he's going to reach out to Vladimir Putin to try and smooth things over?
Well, based on what he laid out in his national security strategy and what he's been saying about China, I think with China, he's talking about trade. Reciprocity is one of those things, having a friendlier business environment in China for U.S. companies, holding them accountable for stealing our ideas and our patents and reproducing what we come up with in terms of our intellectual property. In terms of North Korea, the UN just passed new sanctions to take away 95% of the oil and gas going into North Korea. But in terms of, pushing China to do more, I don't know how that's really going to work. On the Russia side, there was an acknowledgement in this national security strategy that Russia is trying to do things like put propaganda into the United States and other countries to kind of change the opinion of voters in terms of what they think going into an election. Right. So, and the cybersecurity thing is also a big issue with them. But North Korea is something that I think China thinks is, and Russia believe is our problem to deal with, and ultimately we're going to be the ones to deal with it.
We're going to see how this starts to really shake out after the new year. Katie Pavlich, thank you for being here, of course, on Christmas Day.
See you soon. Thank you. Merry Christmas.
Domestic news now. President Trump using this holiday weekend to take aim at a top FBI official. The president criticizing Deputy Director Andrew McCabe amid he may retire from the Bureau next year. The White House laying blame on the Russia investigation.
The president believes that the American people have a right to know as to what happened with that investigation. When we put all of our faith and confidence in the Department of Justice and the FBI, knowing that there should be no bias there, he's making the point that we need to make sure there's no bias. And I think there's serious concerns about whether or not there was or was not.
Yeah. Watch the White House continue to talk about this. Ellison Barber live in Washington. Merry Christmas, Ellison.
Merry Christmas to you, Leland. So sources are telling Fox News acting FBI Director Andrew McCabe is eligible for retirement in March. For weeks, there have been rumors about a potential McCabe retirement. A handful of news outlets reported that yesterday, that McCabe would retire in the new year. We don't know that for sure, just that he's eligible. But those reports seemingly led to a tweet storm from President Trump. In it, he attacked McCabe and said he's racing the clock to retire with full benefits. Democratic Representative Ted Lieu says Trump's tweets are a gift to special counsel Robert Mueller, writing, quote, POTUS has tweeted quite a bit about career FBI official Andrew McCabe, who could be called as a witness against Trump in an obstruction of justice case. He goes on to say, Merry Christmas, Robert Mueller. The White House defended the tweets on Fox News Sunday.
Is that helpful for the president to repeatedly attack top officials of the FBI?
Chris, I think the president believes that the American people have a right to know as to what happened with that investigation.
McCabe spent 2 days and over 14 hours testifying on Capitol Hill just last week. Democrats said the closed-door meetings were not meant to find facts, but instead, in their view, were meant to discredit the special counsel's Russia investigation.
What's going on behind those closed doors? We all know what's going on behind. It's not a search for the truth. It's a search to undermine the legitimacy of Mueller's investigation.
I think it's critically important that we respect the independence of the Department of Justice and the FBI. No one's above the law.
Another person Trump tweeted about, James Baker, an FBI official whose sources say was removed from the FBI's general counsel. The counsel is read in on all of the investigations handled by the FBI. Sources tell Fox News Baker is not fired, but reassigned, and his reassignment may somehow be tied to a separate leak investigation. Fired FBI Director James Comey defended Baker on Twitter, saying he's being attacked for political gain and as someone who has honorably served the country for 25 years. Leland?
Yeah, we're going to hear a lot more from James Comey with his book coming out as well. Ellison Barber in Washington. Ellison, thank you. Cheryl?
Well, Leland, Pope Francis sharing his Christmas message to the world, what he had to say about North Korea, the Middle East, and his hopes for 2018.
Plus, another Christmas message, this one coming from Joe Biden. So, is this the start of a Biden 2020 campaign?
And who says the police can't have a little holiday fun? The special reason these officers laced on their skates.
And we're caroling through the night. And this Christmas will be a very special Christmas for me.
Your body was made for better things.
These officers taking a spin around an ice rink with 200 students. The San Francisco Police Department hosted the annual event last week with the goal of bringing the community together.
Pretty common to get Christmas wishes from politicians, but a video making its way around Twitter has a lot of people asking if the latest holiday message from former Vice President Joe Biden means that he is perhaps soft launching a Biden 2020 run. It was put on Twitter by Joe Biden along with his wife Jill, encouraging small acts of generosity and addressing troops far from their families this holidays. Let's talk about it with our political panel. Shirai Hashmi, commentary video editor and writer for The Washington Examiner, and Antoine Seawright, Democratic strategist. Gentlemen, great to see both of you. Antoine, is at least the former vice president leaving open the possibility of a 2020 run?
Well, it's very smart and politically smart for the middle-class messenger-in-chief, Vice President Biden, to flirt with the idea of running for president in 2020. He's still very, very popular among the Democratic base. And when you look at the early primary states, the road to the Democratic nomination, it comes through states like South Carolina, where I'm from. He's still very popular here with working-class Democratic voters. So I think it's very smart for him to continue to flirt with the idea. Let's keep in mind, we have a very unpopular popular president that occupies the White House right now. And so that means there will be incredible opportunities for Vice President Biden and others to possibly really flip the White House in 2020.
Siraj, Antoine's always talking about how popular Joe Biden is. Isn't that typical, though, that politicians are always popular when they're not in office and when they're sort of on the bench, if you will? Just ask Hillary Clinton that.
Well, yeah, Hillary Clinton has one of the highest disapproval ratings right now, not being president. But of course, she's not the president. Joe Biden, who is a very favorable member of the Democratic Party. However, he is 75 years old. If he were to run, he'd be 77, 78 years old by the time we're even considering electing another president or Trump getting a challenger. But at this time right now, Joe Biden, he has a lot of favorables. Distancing himself from President Obama in a way by not running in 2016 probably helped him. But again, he missed his window in 2016. He had a very good chance of beating Hillary Clinton in the primaries and arguably beating Donald Trump in the general election.
Well, timing is everything. Obviously, he was dealing with the death of his son, and that's the reason he gave for not running in 2016, said he just wasn't emotionally ready. Let's listen to that video message to get you guys to dissect it.
To all of our troops spending this holiday season away from their families and loved ones, please know we think of you and we have your backs and we know what it's like. And we're looking for you to come home safely.
Well, and he knows what it's like to be the father of somebody who was overseas as well. Antoine, what do you make of how that video was? It's slickly produced. It is well lit. Dare you say it almost looks presidential or wants to look presidential?
Well, again, I think that most people will view our current commander-in-chief as being not so presidential, considering. So that video speaks to the heart and minds of the average, everyday American citizen in this country. We know that the military issue, the ideal of the military, it cuts into party lines with the Democrat, Republican. And so he's speaking to the real heart and soul and the heartbeat of the American people with that video. And I commend he and his team for putting that together.
All right, sure. I just want to get your thought, though, on the other side of this. You have a possible run by Joe Biden. You have a lot of Democrats who are jockeying for position. On the other hand, you have Jeff Flake, the senator from Arizona, who's not going to run in 2018. A Trump supporter basically said that she was going to take him on in the primary, and he decided to drop out. That said, he told ABC this week, I don't rule anything out, but it's not in my plans, talking about a possible primary challenge in 2020 against President Trump. What does it say, whether you agree with him or not, whether you think he's disloyal or whether you think he's a man of principle, that that's even a conversation of a Republican trying to primary President Trump?
Right now, Jeff Flake has a lot of issues going forward. I mean, he's probably in the running for being most hated man in America, not named Trump. I mean, his most recent accomplishment to date was giving $100 to Democrat Doug Jones in the Alabama special election, and then turning his back on a lot of Democrats and voting for the GOP tax bill. So he's not making any friends right now in both the Republican and Democratic Party. And the fact that he has a chance of running against Trump in 2020, it's slim to none at this point, considering the fact that President Trump has been doing a lot, at least for his base, if not for the establishment Republicans that he's trying to represent.
All right, gentlemen, have to let it go there, but I will say this on this Christmas. May all political conversations around the Christmas tables around the country be as civil as this one was here today. Nice job, guys. Merry Christmas to you and yours.
Merry Christmas, Antoine.
All right, all the best.
I second that big time. Keep it peaceful today, folks. Well, President Trump promising to get America working and wealthy again. A look back at the impact his pro-business policies have had on Wall Street in 2017. It was a big one. And it's a white Christmas in some parts of the country. We're going to show you where the snow is falling.
Like Christmas, everywhere you go. Take a look in 5 and 10, glistening once again, with candy canes and silver lanes aglow.
Ho, ho, ho. Looking for family, and it is a white Christmas in at least some parts of the country. That storm system also bringing some slick and dangerous roads. Portland, Oregon, 8:30 in the morning there, and they're waking up to a mix of sleet and snow and freezing rain. Washington State, some areas got up to 3 inches, enough for some to have their very first snowball fight ever in an area more used to rain, typically around Seattle. The National Weather Service defines a white Christmas as 1 inch of snow on the ground on Christmas morning.
Well, Pope Francis, in his traditional Christmas message today, calling for peace in the Middle East and praying that tensions will ease on the Korean Peninsula amid the growing nuclear threat from North Korea. But even with protests in the Holy Land over President Trump recognizing Jerusalem as Israel's capital, Christmas offers hope of peace on earth for 2018. Let's bring in First Baptist Church in Dallas Senior Pastor Robert Jeffries. He's also a Fox News contributor. Pastor, Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas to you.
You know, we were talking earlier about the fact that Christmas Day in particular should be a day to be with your family, sit around the table, you know, go to church. You went to midnight mass, but it's maybe not a day for politics yet. Do you think that we can actually take one day and maybe have a little peace around the world, sir?
Well, I think we can, because, you know, the message of Christmas is, regardless of what is going on in the world today, God is on our side. God loves us. And while that doesn't erase our problems, it certainly puts them in perspective. The Apostle Paul said, if God is for us, who can be against us? And the great message of Christmas is God has given us what we need most. You know, somebody said if our greatest need had been for education, God would have sent a teacher. If our greatest need were for money, God would have sent an economist. But our greatest need was for forgiveness, and that's why God sent a Savior. The angel said to the shepherd, for unto you is born this day in the city of David a Savior who is Christ the Lord.
Well,
and that's the meaning of Christmas.
You know, Pastor, and certainly the Holy Land has been a big news topic, political topic, with the United States making the decision to move our embassy back to Jerusalem. But Jerusalem, what's interesting is that it's a city of many religions and many churches and mosques. And do you think that they can actually find a way to all kind of still, you know, be peaceful in the Holy Land? Do you think that this situation, this tension is going to get worse over there?
Well, I'm not a prophet. I can't predict, but I want to tell you this. President Trump did absolutely the right thing in acknowledging Jerusalem as the capital of Israel. In fact, a couple of weeks ago, he invited me at the White House Christmas party to say a few words before I closed in prayer. And I thank the president for having the guts to do what no other American president has done. And I said to the audience there at the White House, this president is on the right side of history. He's on the right side of God. And interestingly, the Christmas story verifies what the president did. You know, when the Magi, the wise men, came to search for Herod, they came to Jerusalem because that's where the capital was. That's where the palace was. That was 2,000 years ago. People recognized Jerusalem as the rightful capital of Israel.
Well, it is Christmas Day, Pastor, and it has been a year that's been met with a lot of divisiveness in the country. What's your message to Americans this morning?
Well, my message this morning is we can be at peace with one another because we have peace with God. And the greatest need we have is the need that God met at Christmas. And, you know, the Bible says just as God has forgiven us through Christ Jesus, we ought to forgive one another. Paul said, be kind to one another, tenderhearted, forgiving one another, just as Christ has forgiven you. And that's a great thing for us to remember 365 days a year.
No, that is true. Pastor Jeffries, thank you so much for being here again. Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas to you.
Well, Apple admitting to slowing down some iPhones on purpose, and didn't take long. Lawsuits have already been filed in several states. So is Apple in the wrong? Our legal panel on what this could actually mean for you.
And exactly a week, recreational pot going to be legal in the state of California, marijuana in the state of California. Now, the rules are already published, but there's still more questions than answers about how this is all going to work. Will Carr live from Los Angeles this Christmas morning. Good morning, Will.
And Cheryl, looks like it will be a merry 2018 for pot companies in California, but there's still a bit of a haze lingering over a lot of the rules and regulations. That said, one thing is for sure, California is trying to send a message to the rest of the country.
It's the beginning of the end of the war on marijuana, which means it's the beginning of the end of the war on drugs. You can't criminalize your way to good behavior.
While sales are expected to boost California's economy, the state didn't finalize its list of regulations until mid-November. That left cities, which have to come up with their own regulations, scrambling. Some, like San Francisco and Los Angeles, won't be able to grant business licenses until after January 1st.
So businesses will still have to come to the department, get temporary approval to do legal adult use sales before that even takes place.
Then there's the law enforcement side. Police departments expect DUIs to go up and plan to adjust their overall focus.
They'll be focusing on the large grow houses, maybe in neighborhoods that bring other elements, criminal elements to those neighborhoods. Those are the quality of life type of issues that we need to still continue to deal with.
It's already legal to use recreational marijuana in California, but you still may not be able to buy it legally come January 1st, depending on what city you live in. Cheryl.
It's fascinating how they're going to figure this all out. Will Carr, thank you, Will.
Right. Merry Christmas.
Well, a lot of people bought or gave new iPhones this Christmas because they thought their old ones were slow. Well, you weren't just thinking that. Apple now admits they have slowed down older phones. The company says it's to save the older batteries. Class action lawyers say it's tantamount to fraud to get people to buy new phones. To talk about it, Kent Zimmerman, National Law Journal contributor. Kent, nice to see you, as always. Admittedly, you've got a dog in this fight because your iPhone 7 was one of the ones that was slowed down. Do you have a case now against Apple?
Well, you know, Leland, so my iPhone 7 here, it's been slow. I've assumed I need to go and get a new one. The only reason why I don't have a new one is because I haven't had time to go over to the iPhone store. Then Apple comes out and they say, well, we slowed the phones down on purpose. I think what Apple is definitely guilty of, they're guilty of poor communication. That's for sure. In other words, they said recently we slowed them down, but they did not say that originally. And so it looks like they weren't transparent. It looks like Apple fumbled the communication. And so it causes a lot of people, including me, to say, well, wait a second, were they pulling one over on me? Were they not honest with me? Did they mislead me? That question comes up.
There's the what you do and how you do it, as my grandmother used to say, but then there's the legal issue. And whenever you do one of those new Apple updates, they have the terms of service, which if you've ever scrolled through, you're still scrolling because it's impossible to get through. But you then click agree. So somewhere buried in that, is there something that Apple says, hey, we can do what we want to have the best user experience, and it's may not be a get out of jail free card for the communications, but it would be for a lawsuit?
You know, we'll see. I agree that you never, you know, I'm trained as an attorney, and that thing is impenetrable. It's, 10 plus pages, single space, small type, hard to know what it means, particularly for everyday folks who are looking at that. And as you say, it's so long you don't even scroll through it. And so Apple has very smart attorneys. I've actually met a number of the in-house folks who are attorneys at Apple. They're smart people. They covered their bases. But it's, you know what? It's legal mumbo jumbo to most people who are reading it. And when you look at the language about the upgrades, it talks about enhancements, it talks about improvements, and most people think that it means it's going to make the phone run faster. And I'll just mention one other quick thing. They should have just said, if you need a new battery, you should get a new battery. And in fact, on their laptops, often they tell Apple laptop users, you need a new battery. Right. They should have done that in the iPhone case.
Well, again, a little bit of thinking ahead sometimes saves you in the communications world. How does this play out? So often we hear about these class action lawsuits. The lawyers get about $645 million in a settlement, and then all of us get an email that says, congratulations, here's $3.94 to spend at the iTunes store.
Yeah, I think that's very frustrating, and I agree, and I've seen that happen many times. My prediction on how this plays out is something very much along those lines, and I don't think it's right. I think it's likely that Apple's going to want to make this go away. They're not going to want me and you and others in the media to be talking about this endlessly. They're not going to want to go through discovery where they've got to produce all of their internal emails and documents. They're going to want to get rid of this in all likelihood. That probably means eventually there will be a settlement, or maybe a number of settlements, and I think consumers, some will probably get something back. It won't be a lot per consumer. But to your point, Leland, the lawyers, they usually clean up in these cases. Yeah. And I personally don't think that's right.
Yeah, well, cleanup would be an understatement there. And you make a good point. So many of these class action lawyers know that when they're going after a company as big as Apple with billions and billions and billions of dollars of cash sitting there who don't want the PR nightmare, it's a little bit more about the hold-up game and the shakedown game than it is about whether Apple did anything right or wrong.
Completely agree. And, the people who we're talking about who bring these cases and make so much money on them, they're plaintiffs, class action lawyers. It's different than those on the defense side that are representing the companies. But the plaintiffs' class action lawyers, you're right. They bring these claims. They know the company is going to want to settle, and so they're going to make money whether they settle or whether it goes to trial, which is unlikely. In some countries, in England, for example, they have what are called loser pay rules. And that causes lawyers to be very careful about filing claims because they could have to forfeit their fees and the loser has to pay the fees. Some say we should take a second look at the rules here in the U.S. to prevent this kind of thing from happening in the future.
Yeah, and the trial bar spends an awful lot of money on lobbyists on Capitol Hill to make sure that doesn't happen here. Kent, great to have you in. Merry Christmas to you and yours. Maybe, you never know, maybe you get home and there's a new, faster iPhone for you.
I would love it. Merry Christmas, Leland. Take care.
Right, take care, buddy. Cheryl?
Yeah, it's called the 10, the iPhone 10. Well, President Trump promising jobs in America while major mergers rocked Wall Street. Fox Business Network anchor and my colleague Maria Bartiromo has the business year in review.
For the economy and the stock market, 2017 was the year of the businessman turned president, Donald Trump.
Together, we will make America strong again. We will make America wealthy again. We will make America proud again. We will make America safe again. And yes, together, we will make America great again.
His blunt speech on Inauguration Day setting the tone for a contentious year in politics, but a wildly successful year for much of the business and investing world. All the major stock indices hitting records seemingly day after day, shattering milestones along the way, with about $6 trillion in value added since his election.
This is a very big day for your money. Look at that. 24,000 on the Dow.
Business leaders credit much of the run-up to the pro-business, pro-growth agenda of the Trump administration, a rollback of Obama-era regulations and the promise of tax reform, helping the rally. He ends the year finalizing a $1.5 trillion tax overhaul and economic growth of 3% or better for 2 straight quarters.
There's a tremendous enthusiasm for business in this country. So a lot of things have changed.
But there were setbacks for the White House as well. A thumbs down from John McCain, killing the GOP promise to repeal and replace Obamacare.
This doesn't have to be the end of the story.
But in the climate of less regulations and the prospect of higher interest rates, mega deals littered the landscape of corporate America. Broadcom targeting Qualcomm with an offer worth more than $100 billion. CVS trying to acquire Aetna in a merger that could reshape the entire healthcare industry. And AT&T fighting the government in its bid to own Time Warner. Meanwhile, the good and the bad of technology was on display in 2017. Artificial intelligence and robotics taking major leaps forward. But hackers making their mark too. A huge breach of the very information Equifax was supposed to protect. 150 million Americans' personal and financial data stolen, prompting national outrage from congressional investigations. But all in all, it was a great year for technology as well. Amazon and Google crossing $1,000 a share. Apple marking the 10th anniversary of the iPhone. Apple has now sold more than 1.25 billion iPhones in the last decade. And then there was the scandal decades in the making, rocking nearly every industry in America. Sexual harassment. From a slew of high-profile Hollywood people like Harvey Weinstein and Kevin Spacey to major media figures like Matt Lauer, Bill O'Reilly, and Charlie Rose, to numerous reports of a boys' club culture in Silicon Valley, taking down several executives, including former Uber CEO Travis Kalanick. Powerful men losing their positions as the #MeToo movement gains steam. Finally, the year ends with a question everybody is asking: is Bitcoin a bubble or the real deal? The cryptocurrency exploding in 2017, starting the year at $1,000, incredibly cracking the $20,000 range. Where it goes from here will surely be a major story next year as we close out a truly remarkable business year in 2017. I'm Maria Bartiromo, Fox Business Network, New York.
And, you know, she mentioned it just there, but the stock markets under President Trump, you cannot deny that he has done incredible things for the markets and also for regulation, pulling back for every new regulation that they implemented, they killed 22. So that really helps the economy and business.
Yeah, for sure, and inspires more investment. And the follow-on effects, it's not, you know, we haven't seen all of the effects in this year. It's 2018 and 2019 that you'll start to see the return on investment, both of the deregulation and then what people have been willing to invest now. We've heard Boeing talking now about putting hundreds of millions of dollars into building new facilities as well.
And also the average American, just trust me when I say this, that you're going to get either a 0.5% to a 2% jump in your annual salary, and that's going to start next year because of tax reform. That is the analysis that I trust. So.
There you go.
Thank you, Tax Foundation. Well, Mother Nature putting on a red-hot display, sending a torrent of lava down the side of a mountain in a vacation paradise.
Plus, heading home for the holidays, well, it can cause a great deal of stress. So how do you handle the pressure and perhaps de-stress as you head into the new year? We could all use that. Now, lava is flowing down the slope of a massive volcano there. Here's the new video. If you're out in Hawaii for Christmas vacation, you can see it. This is the U.S. Geological Survey's Hawaiian Volcano Observatory a few days ago at the Kilauea volcano on Hawaii's Big Island. As of last night, it is still erupting, not threatening any communities, but perhaps threatening the observation point.
Well, you know, a lot of us are feeling a little bit stressed out from all the year-end holiday activities, shopping, travel. You got your family all around you. Maybe that takes a bit of a toll. Well, de-stressing is always a good idea, so we've got some tips on how to cut stress for the new year. Dr. Devi is a clinical associate professor at New York University School of Medicine. It's good to have you here on Christmas Day.
Good to see you. Merry Christmas.
You know, it's funny because this survey out of the UK said that 84% of respondents said that being with their family took away their stress. I beg to differ on that one. I think that survey was flawed. But let's talk about this because obviously stress can hurt the body. In particular, we're learning more about how women's hearts are affected by continual stress.
Sure. So actually, women may be more susceptible to stress in terms of the blood flow to the heart. So the way to think about it is the heart pumps blood, oxygen, and nutrients to the rest of the body, but it also needs blood flow. It needs those things. So typically, traditionally, you think about stress tests, you know, in the medical community as a physical stress, that you're walking, you're running, you're doing these different things. But now more research is showing that it doesn't just have to be a physical stress where the heart needs more oxygen and nutrients, but mental stress is enough to kind of increase the demand for the heart. So public speaking, any of these things, or even family events like we're talking about with the holidays.
Even today, if your football team starts to lose, I mean, that could be a big deal.
Exactly. So to see these changes in the heart is concerning.
Yeah, it also because it can affect the body. But what can we do to actually minimize stress? I mean, I know we've heard that the regular things about do meditation, try to get more sleep. What do you say?
Well, I agree with all of those things. You know, I think first and foremost, I mean, to take the time to do those things is hard for most people, right? Because they feel that, well, if they had the time, then they wouldn't be as stressed out. So one thing, at least that I think of, is to separate what are your actual problems that you have to deal with versus other problems that people try to put on you, right? So if you can separate those things out, kind of give people maybe some strategies to deal with their own problems, but not get embroiled yourself, I think that's first and foremost. After that, you know, getting enough sleep, having enough exercise, so within your range, you know, you don't have to go out and physically tax yourself, but even walking can improve circulation and blood flow to the organs.
Well, I was going to say, isn't that another way to deal with stress is to exercise? I know that if I'm stressed, I start running. I get my shoes on. So is that something that people
Exactly. So that would be a great way to do it. I mean, that has a lot of other benefits. I mean, even minor things like walking. So let's say some people can, adopt a pet, let's say, right? Even that daily activity of walking with a pet can make a difference. Listening to music, even at the same time, can make a difference. So all of these things, especially getting enough sleep, can make a huge difference. Now, specifically for today, I would say the things are, if you could avoid family arguments about politics and other things, that can make a huge difference. People tend to drink more over the holidays, which, can be more relaxing, more festive, but, be careful what you say if you're drinking more and be cautious about the hangover side effects potentially. thankfully.
Which
so.
could be a stress on the body as well.
Exactly,
That's a
for
good
this
point,
time,
you know.
yeah.
And I think what was interesting about that we're talking so much about women's health and stress during the holidays, let's face it, it ends up being, you know, the woman, the mom of the house that ends up doing all the cooking and doing the decorating and doing the shopping
cleaning,
and everything.
yeah.
So what would
looking
you
out
say,
for everybody else.
what would you say to, as you're about to be a new mom yourself, what would you say to moms out there?
Well, I think, you know, first of all, there is a lot of evidence that being generous and giving gifts and spending your time on others does help decrease stress. It does bring joy. But at the same time, you know, take it easy on yourself and remember to have time for yourself. So as much as possible, try to delegate a little bit. So.
Everybody's getting their 2018 resolutions together. I'm assuming not stress out as much is going to be one of them.
Exactly. Hopefully we can do it.
Well, Dr. Debbie, I tell you, it is a stressful time. We hope that today, Christmas Day, is peaceful for many families across the country, and maybe they don't talk about politics for just one day, maybe. Dr. Debbie, it was great to have you on the show.
Nice to see
Thank
you.
you so much. All right, there you go. Not enough, we got to de-stress a little bit, Leland. That's the point.
All right, there'll be eggnog for everybody after the show. Another thing that is pretty stressful is meeting the family for the first time at the holidays. Well, here it was, newly engaged Prince Harry and Meghan Markle stepping out in public for the holiday. We'll tell you how they're dealing with the stress coming up.
Hi, I'm Joan London. Today's senior living communities have